Hey, welcome back. We're going to continue our little mini series on incident response. In the last video, we talked a little bit about incident response as a whole, who the kind of members of an incident response team are, and what you can sort of expect out of an incident response engagement, maybe. We're going to start diving into the individual pieces of the incident response cycle. So, if we kind of talk about it a little bit, this is the SANS incident response cycle. Step one is preparation, and that's where we really are today. Preparation is when we're doing exactly what we're doing now. We're learning about incident response. We're putting together the tools we need, maybe the incident response plan. We're getting people sort of aware of what needs to happen. And hopefully, the goal here is to be ready for when incident response needs to happen. The last thing we want to do is an emergency to occur, an environment get breached, there be ransomware, some other type of virus, and people are then trying to figure out what to do. That's a very stressful time to learn this stuff, so we want to prepare. Step one is preparation. So, what are we kind of preparing for? With any incident, there's sort of four major pieces to the puzzle that we're trying to solve. We want to know how the attacker got in initially, and that's called initial access, right? Was it a phishing email? Did they, find a vulnerability in a piece of software that was externally facing? Did somebody download a file because they thought it was this neat new, free piece of software and it turned out to be a virus or some other malware? Was there a supply chain attack? Was a piece of software that you use compromised, and as a result, the attacker was able to leverage that to get into your network? Initial access happens a lot of different ways. You have to figure out what that way was, otherwise you can't resecure your network. We need to find out what kind of persistence methods an attacker used, right? How are they intending to stay in your environment? If you don't know what persistence method an attacker is using, you can't get them out. They'll probably still be there, right? Like, even if you closed off the method that they got in with, if they've planted some kind of backdoor or opened up some other methodology, like they gave themselves legitimate credentials for your VPN now instead of using the compromised credentials, you're in a tough spot. So you have to understand that persistence method. You need to figure out where the attacker moved in your network. So lateral movement. How did they get in? Now, where did they go? Were they able to migrate off the initial host that they compromised to other hosts? Were they able to access firewalls? Were they able to get into applications? Did they create other accounts for themselves? How did they navigate through the network? And you need to figure out what they were trying to accomplish. We call that actions on objectives, right? Where they're trying to steal data. Is this some type of ransomware event where they're trying to encrypt your data and ask for a ransom? Are they just looking to extort you and steal your data and say, hey, we're going to release this unless you pay us? Or were they actually after the data where they say, hey, we got this, right? Like, now it's ours, and that has some type of detrimental impact to your business. Maybe it was, the secret plans for a new product you're going to launch. Maybe you're a government and it is information about an asset overseas. There's lots of different things that an attacker could want. But ultimately, during incident response, you're trying to solve these four pieces of the puzzle. So, how do we prepare? You do training, just like we're doing right now, right? You learn about it, you kind of document things, you build out incident response plans, you practice, you do red team exercises where somebody pretends to be an attacker and breaks into your network, and you see if you can figure that out. You do purple team exercises where somebody's breaking in and your blue team guys are sitting around going, okay, I saw you attack that firewall. Great. We know the detection for that is working. All right, we're going to open up some phishing emails. Boom, we saw that happen. We know when that'll occur. You do tabletop exercises. Great way to kind of go through things. You can explore different scenarios, different technologies, and all that stuff without maybe the technical impact to your environment. And you start tightening up things like policies, procedures, and role assignments, right? This is where your incident response plan really comes in. You start documenting who is your incident commander, like we talked about last time. When is something officially an incident? When that happens, who needs to be notified? How do you notify them? Do you call them? Do you email them? How do we even communicate? Do we set up a bridge on WebEx, or do we use Teams, or do we just jump on a conference phone call? Do we use our email system if we think there's a compromise? Because that might be kind of sketchy. Preparation is all about making those decisions ahead of time. When do we call our lawyers, right? When do we call our communications teams? When do we notify our insurance company? These are all the steps and decisions you want to make well before an incident happens. That way, when it's 2 a.m., when it's 3 a.m., and things are starting to kind of pop off and it's scary and stressful, you're not trying to navigate these decisions at that time. You're just saying, okay, when we talked about this earlier this year, we decided that if there was a confirmed ransomware incident, step one is X, but we have to notify our cybersecurity because our policy mandates that, right? Our cyber insurance says that we have to call them the moment we know because we have to use their forensics team. Boom, decision made, you make that happen. That's what preparation is about. As you practice stuff, there are some fun ways, things like that can be a little boring. So I always want to give a shout out to the team over at Black Hills Information Security for making Backdoors and Breaches. This is not a paid sponsorship or anything like that. I just love them. I carry around a bunch of decks pretty much always. If you see me at a conference, come find me. I bet I have a deck you can have. I have their original packs. I have their OT packs, their cloud security packs, their Huntress special editions because I like the people at Huntress. So look for fun ways to engage your team, right? If you go through this list and you're always popping out with a PowerPoint presentation and you're like, this is what incident response is, you're going to lose people pretty quick. So have some fun with it. I think games like Backdoors and Breaches are a good way to engage. We've even done events at things like bars and stuff like that where we set up the tables and we can do competitive games, or you can run them with your customers if you're an MSSP. Really good way to kind of just engage with people. But the point is, you need to practice this stuff, right? You need to understand what tooling is available to you. What are the threats that you might encounter? And then practice those. Go through them together. Say, okay, it's ransomware. What do we do? What tooling do we have available? Do we use our SIM? Do we use our EDR? Do we call our MDR provider? Do we have a SOC that we're using? What time? How do we get a hold of the SOC, right? Like, if it's 2 a.m. and there's an emergency, how do we notify an analyst that we need some help here? If we're not seeing the logs, how do we get a hold of our SIM engineers? You work through all those different scenarios and you make sure everybody is aware of it, or at least where it's all documented so you can move through these things slowly or smoothly. All right. And that's what preparation is all about. Step one of the SANS incident response cycle, preparation. So that's what this messaging is all about. Have a great night. The next video, we'll talk about identification and probably containment together, maybe. Have a great night, everybody. Happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Thanks.